All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. We're going to anchor ourselves today over at the General Motors Proving Ground in Michigan. This massive, incredibly historic facility recently served as the backdrop for a sprawling, entirely unscripted speech by Donald Trump. Now, the source material we are looking at today is absolutely fascinating, mainly because it heavily utilizes a highly specific rhetorical style that he himself refers to as the weave. So instead of your traditional linear political address, the weave involves jumping from hyperlocal anecdotes out to global policy and then whipping right back again, with everything connected by this very loose conversational thread. So today, we're going to untangle that speech and map out exactly how he builds his arguments.
And because this speech does jump around so much, we're going to untangle his rhetoric by breaking the source material down into 6 distinct thematic buckets. 1. The auto industry pitch. 2. Tariffs and trade deficits. 3. Foreign policy and Iran. 4. Taxes and the economy. 5. Immigration, crime, and cities. And 6. The political battlefield.
Okay, starting with bucket number 1, the auto industry pitch, nostalgia, and the working class.
Right off the bat, standing there in the automotive heartland, he immediately works to build a connection with the local auto workers through pure nostalgia. And this brilliantly illustrates his real character persona. By sharing this highly personal, funny anecdote about his father's absolute love for getting a brand new Cadillac every 2 years, he projects this unscripted authenticity that you just rarely see from typical politicians. It's that exact same character the public has known for decades. A billionaire, sure, but one who just naturally chats about his dad having a car stretched out so he could act as his own chauffeur. This real character framing is a highly deliberate tool to build trust and relatability with the very workers standing right in front of him.
Moving right along to Section 2, tariffs and trade deficits, a numbers game.
So, zooming out from those local anecdotes to international trade, he anchors his protectionist policy by pointing to a historic 25% tariff on foreign automobiles and trucks, which he says was intended to force companies to build right here in the United States. He explains the logic very simply to the crowd. If a company builds a car in a foreign country, they have to pay for the privilege of selling it in the American market. But if they build that factory in Michigan, they pay 0 tariffs. He uses this 25% figure to strongly position himself as the only leader willing to aggressively shield domestic manufacturing from foreign competition. And he doesn't stop there. He also throws out this massive figure asserting that during a previous 18-month period, his administration actually slashed the trade deficit with China by a whopping 71%. Throughout the source text, you see him relying on these huge percentages to draw a really stark contrast between his record and how he characterizes previous administrations, who he claims basically allowed other countries to rob American industry blind.
All right, that brings us to Section 3, Foreign Policy and Iran, the negotiation narrative.
Now this is where we really see the weave in action. He suddenly snaps the narrative all the way from Michigan auto plants over to the Middle East, laying out a very specific timeline to frame his whole approach to foreign policy. He claims he transformed the U.S.-Iran dynamic from essentially bribery to military dominance, which he says then resulted in today's friendly negotiations. He specifically contrasts the Obama administration, who he says literally flew $1.7 billion in green cash out to Tehran, with his own administration, which he claims absolutely destroyed Iran's military capabilities. So the crucial takeaway here is that he's framing aggressive military posturing not as a fast track to war, but actually as the mandatory prerequisite for forcing adversaries to the table for those friendly negotiations.
Which naturally leads us into Section 4, Taxes and the Economy, Contrasting Visions. Whipping back to the domestic front, he draws a very, very sharp line in the sand. He neutrally pits his promise to protect traditional gas-powered vehicles directly against what he labels as the insane electric vehicle mandates of his opponents. He claims to have ended policies that would have effectively killed the internal combustion engine within 5 years. Instead, he leans hard into America's vast oil reserves, promising to roll back what he repeatedly calls the Green New Scam, positioning traditional energy and traditional cars as the absolute bedrock of American economic stability. And to really sweeten the deal directly for workers' wallets, he rapid-fires this list of very specific promises. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. And right on cue, he leans back into that real character style we talked about, backing up these dry policy points with a totally conversational story about a beautiful waitress he met in Las Vegas who was just getting killed with tips.
It's his signature way of turning a standard tax policy pitch into an engaging narrative about standing up for everyday working people.
Now, the tone takes quite a shift in Section 5, Immigration, Crime, and Cities, painting a stark picture. Things get a lot darker and much more urgent here. He uses some truly staggering statistics to claim that direct interventions by his team resulted in massive, immediate drops in crime in major Democrat-run cities. He shares these anecdotes about mayors and governors essentially calling him up for help, claiming that the minute his team got involved, crime absolutely plummeted by 88% in Washington, D.C., 80% in New Orleans, and 77% in Memphis. He really paints a vivid picture of urban decay, talking about filth, graffiti, and danger, and then presents his leadership as the immediate, effective cure for all of it.
And sticking with that unapologetic, same-character style, he pairs those local crime stats with incredibly dramatic claims about the southern border, asserting that millions of criminals are pouring over, while also claiming that legal crossings actually hit zero under his watch. He uses really intense, visceral language here, talking about foreign prisons and mental institutions being totally emptied out, and he cites a very specific, chilling figure of 11,888 murderers being allowed into the country. This unfiltered delivery is a major hallmark of his rhetoric. He uses this uncompromising language to project total strength on national security.
Finally, we hit Section 6, the political battlefield, cultural and electoral wars.
To wrap things up, he essentially transforms the rally from a policy lecture into a collaborative team effort, framing the upcoming election as a literal fight against communists. He lays out a strict checklist of voting reforms, demanding things like mandatory voter photo ID, requiring proof of citizenship via the SAVE Act, and largely eliminating mail-in ballots, which he characterizes as being inherently corrupt. He also wades right into the cultural battlefield, calling to ban transgender athletes in women's sports, and he manages to weave all of this heavy material together while just casually chatting off script with people in the crowd, like a supporter he calls out named Brian and former Congressman Sean Duffy, really reinforcing that real character bond with his base.
So, how does he cap it all off? He concludes this entire sprawling thematic journey by promising to completely reverse current struggles and usher in an unprecedented era of American greatness and wealth. After walking the audience through the depths of urban crime and global threats, he suddenly pivots back to this extreme optimism, painting a picture of an inevitable golden renaissance for the country, provided, of course, that his policies are the ones enacted.
So, what does this all mean when we put the pieces together? The crucial point to take away from this explainer is whether his highly recognizable persona and his specific economic promises are actually going to be enough to win over voters in critical areas like Michigan. We've just seen exactly how the weave connects protective tariffs, aggressive foreign policy, tax cuts, and stark cultural warnings into one big, unified message. But the ultimate question remains, will this entirely unfiltered, same-character delivery resonate deeply enough with the working class to actually secure victory on the electoral battlefield? Well, that is exactly what we will all be watching to find out.